Right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to tonight's session. I am Valerie Nye, the library director here at Santa Fe Community College, and we're delighted to have you join us for this evening of literature and discussion. So this is our last session of the fall semester. We are lining up writers to come and join us in the spring. I'll be sending an email out in the coming weeks to invite you to the spring series. And please sign up again. I won't be bringing over email addresses from the fall into the spring. So when I send that email out, please re-register if you'd like to continue joining us. Tonight's event is co-sponsored by the SFCC Creative Writing Department and the SFC Library. And I am really honored to introduce my co-sponsor, Austin Eichelberger, from the SFCC Creative Writing Department. Austin is a writer, an artist, and an outstanding creative writing teacher. He is a full-time faculty member here at SFCC, and I'm going to hand things over to him so he can tell you a little bit about the creative writing program and introduce our distinguished speaker of the evening. So take it over, Austin.
Thank you. As always, welcome. This creative session is brought to you by the Santa Fe Community College Library and Creative Writing Program. We are thrilled to have you join us tonight for this special reading event, and we hope you will come back to celebrate the power of words and storytelling at our future events. Tonight's gathering is an invitation to those who have passion for the written word. If you've ever dreamed of becoming a writer, whether you'd like to craft compelling fiction, pen evocative poetry, or explore the world of nonfiction, SFCC is awaiting your arrival. In our program, students can earn a certificate or an associate's degree in English language creative writing. The Santa Fe Community College Creative Writing Program nurtures aspiring writers, providing them with the tools, guidance, and inspiration to take their creative endeavors to new heights. We believe that writing is not only a useful and practical skill, but an art form that has the potential to transform lives and connect people across time and space. SFCC's creative writing program is focused on your development as a writer, a reader, and a member of a creative community. Our faculty are published authors and professional editors, and our course offerings include a multi-genre workshop and an internship with the Santa Fe Literary Review, SFCC's in-print literary journal. Related degree and certificate requirements include opportunities to intern with local magazines, newspapers, and publishing houses, to explore the world of book arts, and hone screenwriting skills. Students work closely with professors and peers to develop, revise, and publish academic and creative writing in a range of genres and formats. Upon completion, you'll have gained the skills and experience to submit a manuscript for publication, pursue a career in editing, or continue your studies in creative writing. You can also now complete the entire program online. Please see the chat for links to our program website, where you can see our course offerings for 2025, explore the program requirements, find information about the Santa Fe Literary Review, and the Kate Besser Awards, SFCC's very own writing awards. For those of you considering your own creative writing journey, we encourage you to ask any questions you have about the program. Whether you're an experienced writer looking to take a single course or a complete novice ready to explore your creative potential, we have classes and resources for you. And Santa Fe Community College's creative writing program, we believe that everyone has a story and every story is worth sharing. Tell us yours. And tonight at Rygen, at the Writing Generation, we have the distinct honor of having Jake Skeets. Jake Skeets is the author of Eyes Bottle Dark with a Mouthful of Flowers, winner of the National Poetry Series, American Book Award, Kate Tufts Discovery Award, and the Whiting Award. His work has appeared in journals and magazines such as Poetry, the New York Times Magazine, and the Paris Review. Other honors include an NEA Grant for arts projects, a Mellon Projecting All Voices Fellowship, and the 2023-2024 Grisham Writer in Residence at the University of Mississippi. He is from the Navajo Nation and teaches at the University of Oklahoma, and Santa Fe has the distinct honor as a whole of having had him as an alumnus here from IIA. So please join me in welcoming Jake Skeets.
Thanks for the introduction, Austin, and thanks, Val, for coordinating. And thank you all for being here. Yeah, I definitely miss Santa Fe a lot. I miss New Mexico in general. I feel like I haven't been back in a while, so I'm definitely hankering for a green burrito from Blake's, right? So like eggs and sausage and potatoes and or Sadie's, oh my God, in Albuquerque. Oh, that I'd go for stuffed sopapilla right now. Oh my gosh, that'd be so delicious. But yeah, as you can tell, I miss New Mexico a lot. I'm literally almost like salivating right now just thinking about the food. But welcome. Um, and yeah, it's great to be here. It's great to see you all here. My schedule this semester has been so insanely busy. I have no idea how I even sort of burrowed myself into like the hole that I'm in now in terms of work. But I feel like it's nice work at least. It's working around creative writing and poetry and really working at, you know, the written word and literature and dealing with students basically every day, talking about poems. So it's a nice kind of busy, at least. I feel like that's the silver lining that I'm telling myself, and it's really been what's sustaining me, right, as we sort of move into this next phase of uncertainty in terms of politics, climate, etc. I'm pretty sure you're all aware of what's sort of going on in the country across the world right now. Um, and oftentimes I sort of I wake up during the morning, I'm like, is poetry really like a necessity right now? And what I'm finding is that based off my students and colleagues, that it's often poems, right, that we can sort of turn to and sort of vent and have it be like a mirror or reflection of some way and really work through some of these emotional sort of nuances that we carry as people. So yes, it's definitely been my saving grace and sort of like working through this really strange fall season. It's been abnormally warm in Oklahoma, where I'm coming to you from. Um, and we finally are sort of settling down in terms of temperature. Um, and so it's, yeah, these poems I feel like have been really helpful in trying to sort of navigate this new terrain. And I hope you all can hear me okay. Can you hear me okay? I'm not okay, great. I'm not sure what's going on with my computer. I think it's just giving up. Because all the Zoom meetings I've been having have been like issues with sound and specifically my microphone. Um, I got my computer in 2020 during the pandemic when we were all doing Zoom. So I feel like 4 years of Zooming across the country with audiences just like you have been, you know, my computer's like, okay, I think I'm done now. So I'll have to sort of figure what the next steps are. In my dream would have been with you all in Santa Fe, right? That way after we could go get a stuffed sopapilla, right? I feel like that would have been my dream. One day it'll happen. But thank you all so much again for being here. I'm gonna read you some poems, um, and then we'll do some writing exercises based off of the poems, and then maybe at the very end, I can hear some of you read some of what you've written tonight. Um, I feel like that's been the exchange of my past few days, and it's been really grateful to hear from, you know, poets and writers from all different walks of life. The good thing about Zoom is I get to do cool things with PowerPoint and my poetry to sort of help us really get into kind of the groove of the space. Um, and so, with that being said, the poems I'm going to read for you tonight are not from my first book. They're actually from my new collection of poetry called Horses, that's going to be released from Milkweed in 2026. So it's a bit of a wait, but it's on purpose, I promise. It's trying to now working with an editor to really curate and craft this next book, this sophomore book, this follow up to my first book, which has sort of given me such a good, strange life as a poet. It sort of springboarded my career as a writer, brought me to a lot of different places. Um, and I remember, and I often think back to my graduation from IIA in Santa Fe. I was at a coffee shop somewhere in Santa Fe right before graduation, and I actually had forgotten about the time. So I rushed from the coffee shop to the graduation with like, you know, and in the car changing into the robe and sort of like rushing to graduation. And that was the start basically of my journey with milkweed and getting the book out. So this next book is called Horses, and I'm going to read to you sort of some of the poems that create a kind of texture of this new book. And then I'll end with two poems that'll sort of be the springboard into those writing exercises. Let's give me 1 second while I pull it up. Great. Can everyone see that? Perfect. Okay. So again, this is from my second collection called Horses. This is the opening sequence, the opening poem, if you will. It has no title. It kind of just opens. And I'm going to start with some brief context because I feel like context for this particular collection is especially important. So in 2018, on the Navajo Nation, uh, about so nearly 200 horses were found dead at a stock pond near Gray Mountain or Low Mountain on the Navajo Nation. So as you know, being in Santa Fe, being in the desert, stock ponds are sort of watering holes that are set up to water livestock. And so this particular stock pond had actually dried up, was no longer there, had no water anymore, but was just sort of like a mud pit. And so these horses, desperate for water, were digging into the mud, trying to find water, and ended up being stuck and unfortunately passing away there. And all these horses, again, nearly 200 of them were found kind of in a circle. Sort of some of them were sort of literally buried on top of each other because of this desperation for water. And so that desperation for water was really triggering for me, right? Being from New Mexico, being from the desert, really understanding the ways in which water might be the sort of new frontier as our country sort of continues on its path toward climate change and climate crisis. I feel like water, a lot of people are going to be looking to Southwest cities like Santa Fe, Albuquerque, Phoenix, and Flagstaff about the ways in which they've managed water. Um, because I feel like that's going to, again, be the new frontier. Um, and so that particular event, finding these horses dead in a stock pond, it's kind of like the triggering event for this new book, which is why it's called Horses. Just before the silence, a circle of horses in a brightening storm. I carry sound on the range, the sun holds its head low. I carry wind. There is nothing but sand here. I carry morning. The door crickets, sprawls an open field. I carry light, but just a bend of it, an echo around a face. Horses. When I was writing my first collection, um, I was very interested in the short poem, in the fragmentary poem, and the momentary poem, sort of poem that sort of tried to take up the least space possible. And so after the book was published and I was reading all these reviews of Eyes Bottle Dark, um, I had several comments on Goodreads by readers who said that I wasn't capable of writing a longer poem. Um, and so I guess to prove them wrong or prove myself wrong or just acting out of spite, I guess, I decided to open my new collection with a 12-part poem called Horses. So Horses is, I guess, the titular poem. It kind of opens the collection and is comprised of 12 different parts. Um, so I'm going to read to you some of the parts from the opening sequence. Horses. Part 1, Carrier. First, the sky pronounced on red soil, its wont to be more whole, to be more holy. I'm sorry, let me start that over. The first, the sky pronounced on red soil, its want to be more holy, to be more whole. Its promise, its gesture, like a rock up a gentle slope, or one long body wrapped around a map, a gallery of altitudes. It carries time and emissions shifted through scattered grasses over a 6 to 9 month period, a hum, a drift, aloft, alone, a curved mirror, and at any given time, a field of regard, a field of snow, a field of too much light. There, a wasp, a glottis, a stirring of teeth, the letters we carry over the spit of high moon and morning coffee, somewhere in a canyon, on the roadway, a sudden river washing away God. We become lightning sometimes, and there only then becomes song, carry our ache, its kick, pull, haul, pull, become dark cattle, a body of water, the mouth around light, dark clouds leaping into a cold wind. Part 2, Apocalypse. There has been no rain, and we monster hot afternoons in narrow hollows, metals green and sweep over memories of dew and shoreline now rust and golden with sweats from dry wild weeds, lakelets, heads thrown back, still beams and all. There we trace the outline of bay horses in our legs, in the red rocks on the backs of ladybugs. Our hands smell of burning coal, sauntered fox lights and elk-born winters. Birds sing still, and from the jaw of a pale sky, dark clouds kneel like you would a shadow. There are ways nature plants a mirror, so each hill and heat burst look the same. Between the ways, time has a body, in the layers of skin, each a different shade or century. A rill of vowels with different faces reflect the sun in new light every time. There, each new eternity collapsed into mineral strata on a canyon wall in winter droughts, as in a mirror, touching time like it would our bodies, dreaming our bodies. So that's the first two parts of the opening poem, or the titular poem. Uh, the second section of the new book is called Hutso, and Hutso is a Dene word for a kind of meadow. So in the first book, field, or the word field, F-I-E-L-D, is a huge word. Um, I kind of had many conversations about with poets and with readers about the field of the page, how field was working as a kind of construct in my poetics. And I really wanted to find a word that um, uh, sort of, I guess, a Dene word or Navajo word for the word field. There isn't a way of saying exactly that. Instead, there's a kind of variation of words that people will use. Um, I think for me, the a manner of translation, I think, gives me a kind of poetic license, I think, to kind of think outside the box about what field might be. In my head, when I, especially with Eyes Bottle Dark, when I sort of write the word field or hear it in my head, I think of like a kind of depression or kind of like a valley. Um, so that in my head, that's how I see field. And so this word, hotso, means meadow, but specifically kind of like low meadow, right? Um, and it can be connected to other words, right? So, for example, there's a town on the Navajo Nation called Denehotso, which means kind of like a flowery meadow, or has like a kind of beautiful context, like a meadow that's beautiful or that's sort of growing um, in like the middle of a desert kind of thing. And so for me, I really fell in love with the word, really tried to find ways to incorporate it. And so it became the second section, the title for the second section. And so again, the book opens up with a 12-part poem called Horses. And the second section is called Hotso, which is a section comprised of 12 different poems. So numerology is a really big part of the work, I guess, and the structure. Um, the number 12 is quite significant in the worldview. It's the amount of deities that we have, or holy beings, or religious figures. It represents a full cycle of a ceremonial process. And it's one of the numbers that sort of helps us sort of figure out basically every sort of manner of our life way, right? Um, when people think of Navajo, they often think of like four or the number four or like four seasons, four directions, but that's actually a small part of the overall 12 cycle. And so 12 is a big part, and that I use that to sort of help me write this collection. Um, so I'll read just a few poems from the second section, Hotso, and you'll sort of see the kind of threading that I'm using to thread them together. If desert. And then the weather turned, red-bellied and plastic like my arms with the amble of a drone beetle. Night speak, hellhound, all done in and sour. A cold front spreads like mold, quick and in secret, and just before its lip, a veil of sandbush and horseflies make a run for it. Dust storms lope at the sprig and spur of low hills, my reach bent, mumbling something silver, future speak, marsh croak. Even the moon is a bird of white shell, then blue stone flying through the haze of another wildfire, the world ending all along. If horses named weather slipped through the lowland of a silvered night, I begged to keep just a piece of him, begged to the shallow, to the memory of soils, houses turned over into mines beneath the highway. This is us when stretched across moss, two rivers, two rivers, two rivers kissed. We are the pump and steam sometimes. I carry north horses named Weather, beg to ground doves, to the chorus frogs we hear. The mountain bearings are never enough, though. This baptism is what the church came for. A snow squall, the cottonwoods, minnow white. If a feeling, then a bell, dome shaped. Outside the city, I limn and yaw the ellipses of another drunken night. All read and row and scurry. Outside the city, I climb and seal shut the paper thin anxiety of being alone with other men at a time like this. At least I was held. If a feeling, then a bell, dome shaped. If a feeling, then a corral of white horses. dear deep in the sleep of my chest. All right. So that's part one of the reading. So I got a few more poems for you, but this is now we're going to sort of transition into the writing exercises. So as I transition the screen here, if you want to bring out something to write with, I would definitely appreciate it. So if you want to open up a Microsoft Word document or take out your handy dandy notebook, so that we can sort of move through some writing exercises together. Um, okay, so I'm going to share my screen again, and then we'll do some writing. Okay. So I'm gonna first start by reading one of my poems again. So this is all from the new book again. But we're gonna use as a kind of I'm sort of gonna give you the prompt that sort of started the poem itself, and then we're gonna use that prompt, or I'm actually gonna sort of let you use that prompt to write your own version of the poem. If that makes sense. So there'll be two of them. So first, let me read this poem and then I'll explain the prompt, and then maybe we can take some time to sort of attempt to write it out. So this poem is called Where Do Wild Horses Live? Um, and it started because I wanted to write a list poem. And a list poem is a poem that lists different things and that sort of creates the entire poem. And sometimes the list can be very random. They don't really need to connect to each other. And so because horses was such a main thing, and in one of my and as I was researching the issue of horses on the Navajo Nation and on the reservation, basically all across the West, really, or the Mountain West, um, I came across this Facebook thread of these ranchers, and some of them were Navajo, complaining about wild horses. And one of the commenters asked the question, "Where do wild horses live?" And that became the title of this poem. It became the crux and the premise. And then I basically started listing all the places that wild horses don't live as a kind of way to get into the poem. So the poem, again, is called Where Do Wild Horses Live? Not near canyons or slaughterhouses, not at the salt lick, interstate highways, not deer, not elk, not erosion or overgrazing, not wild elsewhere, sleep in the valley, nor sheep in the valley, nor any waters. And so again, the list poem is really interested in moving away from logic. It's not interested in trying to answer the question. Instead, the question becomes a kind of framing for basically asking even more questions. So with that being said, this is your first prompt. Inspired by Where Do Wild Horses Live? Write a similar list poem that begins with the question, Where do blank live? Every line should start with not as it occurs in the poem, with a few deviations if necessary, like I do. So it's your job to fill in what the blank is, and then you're basically going to list where they don't live. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's maybe write for 5-ish minutes, and then we'll sort of see where we end up. Okay, great. All right. So let's go ahead and come back together. All right. So let's go ahead and let that sort of put it aside for a bit. Let it kind of, simmer in the background. Um, Let it do its thing. And let's move on to the second prompt, and then we'll revisit both at the end. So this is my poem called From Autumn. So I'll read it first, and then I'll explain the prompt for it. From Autumn. I wonder the language of light on a late morning walk in what feels like the desert willow of winter. Ash, flow, bellow tough, velvet mesquites, the mountain in the distance, the color of the world. Wind in the language of sky, heard through sentences, through tumbleweeds. What is water if not the sky looking at itself? A warbler sees itself in me, in my throats, or am I just the trick of light ran rampant through a whisper of river, something made alive by voice? But what is voice if not wind? A low lake, collide, joy, wit, wing, joy, only morning. And now let me explain in Navajo. The moon is is a penny. I carry with me an empty notebook meant for the coming clouds. The pages held between the breaths of the silver, I feel choked and collapsed when I walk on damp wood chips and frozen mud. I walk between two houses in favor of the other, and by the time I reach one, it's near noon, and there's a rabbit cloaked in sawdust, murmuring through a snowy field. Not a bird in the sky, only the face of memory, all the colors of every single morning. This poem started actually as a haibun. Um, and so that is the prompt for I Have You Now. So it's a little bit more intense. Um, so I want you to write your own haibun. And again, the haibun poem is one that begins with a prose block that kind of explains the setting, detail, scene, or moment, and ends with a kind of haiku or something similar. But of course, in my one, it's not directly to form. I play with this idea of prose block. I play with punctuation and form. Then, of course, at the end, I couldn't just end with a singular image. I needed to extend it just a little bit more. So deviation from form is fine. But really what I'm looking for is a prose block and then this kind of like verse at the very end. Um, so this time maybe we'll write for um, another 5 minutes and then we'll do some share outs and questions and stuff like that. All right. Let's go and slowly come back together. All right. Well, thank you um for being here, and thank you for taking some time out and writing with me. Um, I feel like it's a really great sort of practice around just sitting down for an evening, right? And writing some poems. Um, so now I'm really interested to hear from you all. So if you want to share your work, share your thinking or ideas that were inspired by my strange writings, or if you want to ask any questions, I'm happy to answer as well. Um, but yeah, I really want to hear from you all.
Please jump right in. Jump right in. No need to
Yeah.
put your hand up.
Sounds good. Hi, Jake. Thank you so much for the reading and the prompts. I'm Noi. I wanted to first ask about your writing longer poems. I'm someone who's always intrigued by them, but never sure like when it's time to keep going versus just kind of like stopping and revising something. So would love to hear, um, how you navigated writing your longer poems.
Hmm. That's a good question. I feel like for me, it began first with trying to train my ear toward the sentence, actually, and how do I sort of maintain a kind of pressure in a longer form? And I started very small, right? So first, how do I maintain a poetic kind of environment or sound or a texture into a longer line. So I started there, and then from there, slowly began building off. Um, the lines sort of began building off each other to create a kind of symphony almost. If I think that's the best sort of metaphor I can give about trying to sort of like have these lines be in conversation with each other over space and time, right? And repetition, I feel like, is a big thing for me, or became a big thing for me actually, and sort of trying to maintain again this kind of like through line of like um trying to sort of like maintain a kind of a momentum through, because it is actually pretty hard work to sort of have to kind of like encourage a reader to turn the page, right? That I feel like it takes incredible energy to do that work. And so for me, it was trying to pay as much detail to the very small things as I could actually, and then that actually became the project of the longer poem was I have all these poems that are very similar. How do I get them into this longer conversation? And it was actually sort of a practice of looking at very small things. And that actually inspired the sort of removal of punctuation entirely in my work, right? Where I really don't use punctuation except for specific moments throughout the entire thing. Even like like the lists and things like that. I got rid of all those commas because for me, I wanted there to be a kind of like anchor for the reader to kind of hang on to as they sort of ventured into the rest of the poem.
I have to throw out there, I had to fill in for a creative session earlier this semester, and it was all about list stories. So we have come full
Mhm.
circle for everyone who has been attending this semester. You've seen the lists exist in every genre.
Yeah,
Just saying. Just saying.
yeah. And to go off of that, Austin, I feel like I've never been a writer of like a notebook. Um, so for me, I always was like I always thought to myself like, oh, I'm a rebel, I don't need a notebook. I don't need to carry around a notebook. Like I can, remember things or
Mm.
use my phone, right? But actually, the notebook is actually extremely helpful of trying to sort of like map or chart all the thinking that you have every day. And in order to train myself to write every day or to write things down, it was actually through lists. So I got a notebook and basically just started listing things, right? So my grocery list, like a list of things I needed to get from like a particular person, a list of things to do, list of poets, right? List of books. And from there began having these larger conversations with myself on the page. And I can finally say that I finished finally a full notebook. I don't think I've ever finished a notebook of just my writing. Um, and now it's actually really fun that I can go back into the book. And now I'm sort of trying to create a kind of index and really trying to highlight moments and like revisit basically the past year or so of my life and like being able to really sort of have this deeper entanglement with, I guess, past versions of me and past thoughts and past days. Um, but yeah, no, I think it's, lists are really helpful in a lot of ways.
It's amazing when you start keeping track like that, you
Mhm.
realize how bad your memory is. You're like, oh, I forget so many things. You go back and look and you're like, I did what? Like, she said
Yeah.
what to me and I'm still talking to her? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I actually hand wrote your first exercise and then typed the second one, and I'm
Mm,
still ruminating. But it was an interesting experience to have a in the two different forms.
mm,
I don't
mm.
know. Do you feel like they feel different when you?
I don't write I don't write any of my like creative work in longhand
Mhm.
in my notebook. My notebook is more filled with like thoughts I had,
Hmm.
lists, um, things I need to do or things I need to remember, dates, times, and things like that. I list in my notebook. I also started doing like nature journaling, so sketching plants and things like that that I come across, trying to identify species, listing the different types of plants I come across. So my notebook is more that.
Mhm.
And then, oh no, also of course notes from like lectures I attend or events that I hear, or just conversations that I have with people, and like I need to write that down. Um, Whereas my work is generally drafted in sort of like Microsoft Word or Google Docs or my phone, right? In the Notes
Mhm.
app.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I feel like it's two separate sort of modes of expression that I'm working with.
Mhm. And I feel very similarly. I'm like you. I typically write creative work on the computer or on my phone. My notes app is always full to overflowing because I always like start a few things or jot a few lines down. I
Yeah.
don't know. I remember one of my professors used to tell us you have to write by hand. And so I've been trying to get
Yeah.
back into it, but it's an interesting, I know. I'm sort of like, I'm not sure if that works very well for me most of the time. It's too slow.
Yeah.
Like my brain moves faster than this.
Mm.
I have a question that came up for me. Sorry, I'm talking so much. As you were reading, I recalled a poetry professor has an article posted online that's about creating line breaks and
Mm.
says you ruin line breaks when you create them as you write. That you should write your poetry as prose out along the line and then go in and introduce breaks to it and break the lines up and pull it down the side of the page. How do you feel about that? Do you write with breaks or?
Hmm. I actually been I think I think for me, breaking a line is very much a feeling. And that feeling can come while you're drafting or while you're revising. I don't think that we should try to like, be didactic about line breaks. I feel like we often try to, be like, oh, you create these kind of rules. But
Mhm.
I feel like the rules that are sort of at play right now are more so the walls of a room, right? And it's our job then to sort of like figure out how we can organize the space that we have within this particular room. I've been like really digging interior design. Like I've been watching tons of YouTube videos of interior design and listening to the way interior designers think about furniture and how we organize our lives in the rooms that make up our homes, right? And I heard this one interior designer talk about design as a feeling, right? That you can do all these mood boards, you can map out your room, you can take dimensions and figure out textures and colors and things like that, but you won't know how that bed will look or how that table will look or how that lamp will look until it's there and you see it, right? And then the designer mentioned that it's a feeling, it's an innate reaction to it there that, oh, that feels right, right? That feels like it's that's supposed to be there, right? Um, and so for me, I think line breaks are very similar. that it's almost like a feeling that you get, like, oh, I feel like it should be broken here. Um, and yeah, I tend to work when I'm trying to do like line breaks that I have a lot of issue with. I'll put it into Microsoft PowerPoint presentation just so I can see it in a larger form, right? And in a margin that's not the margin of the Microsoft Word document, to try and get a kind of those small little textures of breaks, and again, trying to see it as kind of like feeling it out almost.
Wow, that's incredible. Thank you.
Any other people want to talk or?
Emily Drabansky in the chat said, do you always start with the title and then write, or do you write the title later?
Oh, that's a good one. I think it's both. Um, I think for me, titles are actually a great way that I overcome writer's block. So I'll just sort of come up with a title, and then sort of have the poem start from there to see what it might happen. And it's generally a title that is triggering. So it might be a question, it might be a longer sequence or a longer kind of like um, jumping off point for the poem.
Mm-hmm.
Other times it's looking within what I've written to sort of extract the title from there. Um, so I think it goes both ways. I don't think there's any like right or wrong way to go about titles. Again, I think it might just be a feeling, right? Like, but I think the one advice I can give about titles is if you can't, or if you are having trouble with the title itself, and regardless of what you put there, the title is just not coming, like it just doesn't feel right or doesn't fit. For me, that's a huge sign that the piece you're writing is not finished, right? I feel like if you're having that much trouble with the title, you need to go back into the actual piece and keep writing into it, keep revising, keep pushing into the language of it, keep trying new things, because I think a title will find itself, will help you find itself, almost is what I meant to say in a way.
Mm. That's really wonderful advice. I'm writing it down.
Any other folks?
There's lots of quiet people tonight. I just want to thank you for sharing your work. I can't wait for your book to come out, and I don't understand why it can't come out next year. It would be great to see
Tomorrow.
it sooner rather than later.
No,
Um,
it's on purpose for sure.
is it? Is it?
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to that, and I just really thank you for these prompts. These have been really inspiring and definitely a great way to end the day.
Mhm.
Contemplating things, distilling the day in the framework of these prompts has been beautiful. So I'm so grateful for that.
And
Yeah.
if you don't yet have Jake's first book, please go pick it up. It's so incredible. You will not regret it. You really will not. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I have one last ask of you all. Since we're such a
Please.
small group, I'm going to put my email in the chat. I would love if you emailed me whatever you wrote tonight or any other further thoughts or questions. I am trying to save my inbox from all the BS that I receive every day. I want emails from writers, from poets, from emerging writers and poets asking me questions, sending me work. I would prefer that over questions about stupid things. So I'm trying to save my inbox. So please, I highly encourage you to do that if you feel the need to or want to.
Can I share this with? So we have about 100 people we're sending out recordings to and mailings to. Is it okay if I include your email in that
Please,
as well?
I
Okay,
would
okay,
I would rather 100 emails from
okay.
writers than 100 emails from stores and admin and university people. Like I would prefer that over anything else.
Great.
Heaven
Well,
forbid the ones from politicians.
Yeah, I'm done with all of that. I'm trying to cleanse my inbox.
We'll try to make that happen then.
Thank you.
And that is so deeply kind of you, Jake. Thank you. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
We
no,
appreciate
thank
it.
you. And thank you all so much. Please enjoy New Mexico for me. Eat as much green chili as you can, as much red chili, because you don't know how like you miss it so much whenever you leave.
Mhm. Emily in the chat said, I like that as a title, Cleanse My Inbox.
Yeah.
That's the next poem we should all write. Just title it
Yes,
Cleanse My Inbox and then let her rip.
that's that's the third prompt for tonight.
Right, exactly. Thank you so much for being here, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you, all our attendees. As always, thank you to my co-host, Val, my amazing, wonderful co-host, Val, who always takes time to talk about how amazing I am. And I never have time to talk about how amazing she is. Just saying, just saying. Val is incredible. Thank you for her efforts and Emily's efforts. Emily Drabinski works in marketing at SFCC and helped us get the word out about this. Thank you, Emily. And thank you all for being here. We really appreciate you being a part of this with us.
And we hope you'll join us in the spring. Please look for the email to sign up again. So, thank you.
Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.